Let's learn something really quick.
If you got the time, absolutely. And you got the discipline, there's no question about it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great practice to put into your everyday life, you guys.
You generally regret the things you don't do, not the things you did do. Let me say it that way.
Mic drop. This was just awesome. I love meeting my guests in person, and it's a whole nother animal, and the energy is just electric. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bringing you incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is a creative strategist and storyteller. She is on a mission to help professionals everywhere feel a sense of purpose in their careers. She has spent over a decade in her first career as a professional dancer, choreographer, making stories come to life on live stages. As a ed tech leader, she embedded strategy and storytelling into the career content and programs her team delivered. Now, as a consultant and founder of Career Steward, she crafts compelling stories and strategies, to help impact-driven leaders and organizations grow their work. Please welcome Shaté Hayes. Shaté, that's quite something there, girl.
Thanks, Deanna. Thanks so much for having me. I mean, I am so excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for what you do. I can't wait to get into it. I don't think I've ever had like a professional dancer / choreographer on the show. That is super cool. So why don't you start with that, like doing that, because I'm assuming that's something that you loved and that you just like thrived at until you transitioned or evolved into this new phase.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall life really not dancing. So I started dancing at a really, really young age, 3 or 4. I never asked to dance. I was just really clumsy, and my parents put me in dance classes for some grace. And the joke is that, I dance really well, but I'm still really clumsy. So it just chose me. It was just something that I always loved, but I never knew I could have a career as a dancer. It was not something that I saw. The type of career I had, I didn't see growing up because I didn't have cable. So, I went my whole life performing, doing competitive dance and all the things. And then I got to college, and my mom was kind of like, don't major in dance, do something else. Because you don't need a degree in dance per se to be a professional, but then also not a lot of families have exposure to what it means to be creative as a career, right? There's either the extreme of you're going to be famous or you're going to be like homeless. And that's it. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
And there's so much stuff in between. But I took a chance after college and was like, no, I want to be a performer. If I'm going to work every day, I want to love what I'm doing. So I moved to LA and figured out how to build this commercial dance career that I loved. And so I performed all over the world and mostly US and China. And then I choreographed tons of musical theater, and I got a master's in dance and was an adjunct dance professor for a number of years. And I just absolutely loved that work until one day I was like, oh, I think I'm ready to do something else. And so, yeah.
I think that's why you come across so like fulfilled and like the belief in yourself, because you followed a dream, a passion, you fulfilled it. Now you're moving on to the next thing. And I think a lot of people, myself included until now, right? We avoid following that thing that sets our soul on fire, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that thing's going to last forever, but a lot of people are scared of what that looks like. Like your parents said, don't major in dance, right?
Yeah.
And you said it yourself. But look where it took you. Would you ever take that time back, that experience back?
The college one or the pursuit one?
The pursuit.
I would not take it back because I learned so much. Like the rejection alone is just like it built a resilience in me that I don't think I would have gotten any other way. Like who decides, except for an artist, right, to keep going to audition after audition, putting yourself out there for someone to be like, yeah, thanks for coming. Like, sure, no thanks, but no thanks. And to have to choosing to keep doing that. And I remember my very first audition just leaving in full on tears, just I got up there,
Yeah.
I choked, like acted like I never danced before a day in my life, and just kind of skedaddled out of there and was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But quite honestly, as with so many things in life, the only way to get better at those things is to keep doing them. So just like interviewing for a job, the only way to get better is to keep interviewing. And it's interesting that you say that sort of there is this confidence about me now, but I totally didn't have it back then. I shrunk back in fear. As a matter of fact, I would say this sort of self-acceptance and confidence that I'm sitting in now is just newly emergent since the past couple of years. And that's from, living a little, getting a little wiser, therapy, thank goodness, and just, coming to grips with like, hey, this is who I am. And so I might as well just own it. But I spent a lot of time sort of doubting myself. And even though I had enough courage to pursue something I really wanted, I always kind of like compared myself to other people, and I'm not doing it the way that they're doing it. I'm not, thriving the way that they're thriving. And just kind of kept myself in all kinds of just mental mayhem, quite honestly.
Do you still dance?
I will never stop dancing. I was literally dancing today all day. Yes, I will always be dancing.
I love that. I'm not at your level, but I will always be dancing too, girl. Like on a weekend when I'm home here by myself and I've been working, I take a break and I get up and I just dance. Like I still enjoy it. I might have a couple of drinks in me, but it makes me dance even harder. I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
gonna lie.
it's more fun that way for sure. But yeah, even if I'm seated, the music's on, like my body just moves. There's no
Oh yeah.
stopping.
I
Yeah.
love it. That's just like feeling that rhythm and that vibe.
Mm.
So now you do something very different, but it still involves a little bit of creativity, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little
Absolutely.
bit about that transition into what you are currently doing and helping creatives. I'm assuming like people like myself, you're a creative strategist and storyteller. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so I'll start here and say I remember moments in my dance career where I was just like, oh my gosh, I think the first year that I just didn't do anything else, I didn't have a day job and I was only dancing, I may have made like less than 10K. And I was just so
Oh,
proud
wow.
that I had done it. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, exactly, it's just dance work. And so that sense of like, oh, I'm doing this thing that I set out to do. I remember thinking everyone should feel this way. It just feels so magical.
Yeah.
And then I fast forward to sort of grad school and my thesis, I did my research on the intersection between like creativity and spirituality. And that was sort of me trying to explore how much it felt like I was just exactly where I was supposed to be, exactly when I was supposed to be there. And like even as I was dancing, performing, teaching, whatever I was doing in that capacity, I somehow felt like I was a vessel. Like things were coming through me. It wasn't even about me. Whereas a lot of times artists kind of get the rap for being really egotistical and like arrogant. And there's so many of us who are literally in service of the cause still. And so it felt like that for me. So much so that when I was in grad school, literally on the fly, so this is another example of how the work just chose me. I was in the grad student office, sort of writing my stuff, and the department chair comes in and is like, hey, we got a class that's starting in 5 minutes. It's a career course for undergrads. We don't have a TA, a teaching assistant. Can you do it? And I was like, sure. Yeah. Right. So literally within 5 minutes, my life had changed because as I got into this room, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I was suddenly able to tell them all the things I wish I had known when I was starting my career. Not just about how to audition, but what do you do about taxes? And should you take every job? And what happens when you choke at auditions? And then how do you build it? How do you make your career sustainable where it's not just gig to gig, but you actually have like, you can sort of predict what you're making or save for it, or, what do you do when your parents aren't on board with what you're doing? Just like it was just magic. And I think the rest is kind of history. So whenever I decided to transition, there was this body of work that I had started that was able to kind of carry me through.
That is very valuable, what you're able to teach those new creatives, dancers. I don't know the people that were in that class, but wow,
Yeah.
what a gift you gave them.
Yeah, and I wish I had had it. I think when I was starting my career, like blog posts and things like that weren't a thing. Like the internet was kind of a thing, but not much. And I was
Now, like it is now.
exactly. I think I was like looking for work on Craigslist, right? Which is not the way to go.
It's just Is that even still around? Like,
I think it is, and it always shocks me when I hear people talk about it. Who's on there now? You know?
I wouldn't want to know, actually. Let's not find that out. Okay, so that is beautiful. You earned those gifts that you gave away in as a TA, right? And how long do you do that for?
I did that for my last year in grad school. So
Okay.
final year, graduated, and then I moved on to becoming an educator. And then that's when I started to really embed career building into all of my curriculum that I was teaching. And I was able to teach a lot of folks who weren't necessarily looking to be a professional dancer. And in that case, I figured out how to work in life skills in those classes. But for everybody else who was in musical theater or something that was adjacent, I was like, this is what you need to be mindful of. Because back then, a lot of time was spent teaching folks how to make art, how to be a better dancer, how to have better technique, how to perform better. But then there was this, we get out of the studio and then we're like, okay, now what? And so I was trying to really bridge that gap. But even to answer your question from before, like, what is that strategy and storytelling? What I've learned throughout doing this work, even on the career front, is that I think people decide, okay, I'm going to go get a new job, and they just put on your resume all the things that they've done.
Right. Yeah.
And they submit it and they're like, okay, nobody's biting. Or there are people like us who we've got like, okay, I've done the dance thing, I was teaching, but then I had all these random jobs when I was pursuing the thing. And so we've got this really varied background. Is like, how do you make sense of it? And I think the thing that people don't understand is that when people, your market, don't understand who you are, you're going to stay stuck. Like, they don't know how to make sense of you.
Yeah.
And so the stories that you tell are so important. You have to help people understand you. And that's why I love what you're doing here in terms of label free. I get to help multi-hyphenates like us not put themselves in a box.
Wait,
like,
what was it where you said multi what?
Hyphenates, you know, the
Multi-hyphenates. I like
dancer slash choreographer slash, you know, all those hyphens in there.
Yeah.
And there's so many people like us. And I think conventional business teaching tells us to pick one lane.
Right.
And then just talk about that. Just focus is what they tell us. But that doesn't feel real to so many of us, because it's like we have to ignore so many other parts of us. And I'm saying, don't ignore those parts of you. Figure out how to tell the story in a way that makes sense. And that's usually by focusing on how you serve people, like what are the causes that are important to you. And all of those hyphens sort of fit underneath that category, that bucket.
I love that. Yeah, the world has evolved so much, and we're going to have people that are going to fit into that box, but there's people like yourself and like me that are like on the creative side of things, and that we've experienced a lot in life, and that, I don't know about you, but I say yes to almost everything, right? And saying yes to almost everything opens up your mind and your spirit and your soul and just your experiences to so much more. Then, there are things that I said yes to that I'm like, why did I do this? And it turns out to be such an incredible experience that I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that I did that. And maybe it might not mean something to someone else, but I have that experience now in my legacy as a human being and as a person to go look back on and say, hey, you know what? If someone's talking to me about something that it's something I experienced because I said yes to something, I'm like, oh, hey, I know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And so you're able to relate to more and more people by the experiences that you have and not just keeping yourself in that box.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, it absolutely connects you with other people.
Yeah.
And you've done a fantastic job with communicating that. So the way you're able to convey that is like, all of these things I've said yes to, this is how I'm living label free. And this is how I'm giving other people permission to do the same thing. That's how you do it. That's how you make sense of all the things that you've done in your life, because they all mean something. They all matter. And I think they're all equally important. Yeah.
What's one thing that you've said yes to recently that you didn't think that you would do?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. I wasn't
I wasn't expecting to ask that, but because I said that, like, why not?
Something that I said yes to that I wasn't expecting to say yes to. I would say a dance thing, but I totally say yes to dance things all the time. Like, I've basically been in some classes that I'm surprised that I've taken those classes.
Yeah.
I would say that, oh, that's a really tough question. I don't even know where to begin. Help guide me. Give me like a category, like a travel,
Something that is maybe out of your comfort zone that you haven't done before, and that maybe your friends like, let's try this, and you say, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, there have been actually, now that you say that way, there have been a couple of things. So like before when I was saying I was always like shrinking back and my introversion, so a performer who's an introvert, my introversion doesn't help with that. So
No.
I am fine with, doing things on stages, but then I want to just sit down somewhere and be tucked in a corner with a book or taking a nap or binge watching a show. And so it is sometimes really difficult to just be seen, just authentically who I am. So there's a business buddy of mine. We challenged ourselves this year to go live on LinkedIn. And for whatever reason, it just like horrified us. Like, oh my gosh, people are going to see us.
Flying, it's scary.
It is. And so we did it twice this summer. We were like, we're not going to care who's going live. We don't care how people are going to judge us, what our workers are going to say. We're just going to press the live button, and we did it. And it was just like, wow, I can't believe we still did that.
I'm sure that's very empowering, number one. Number two, did anything positive come out of that?
Absolutely. Look at it. So people like I would have never guessed were like, hey, I saw what you were talking about. We were actually talking about how to leave work situations that aren't empowering anymore, things that are no longer aligned. So how to pivot in your professional life. And folks that I know in my personal life were like, oh my gosh, I saw that and I need to hear it. Can you tell me about the work that you do? And it was just so good.
Okay, so that's a great segue. Talking about the work that you do, who's your ideal avatar, and what are they looking to accomplish by working with you?
That's a good question. So I have two actually. So I have professionals, multi-hyphenates like us. So they are folks who have just like this, they've said yes to a lot of different things for whatever reason. And now they're in a position where like, how do I even tell that story so that I can get the new job? Maybe it's something that they've done before. Maybe it's like they're trying to pivot all together and they're like, how do I make sense of all this stuff that I've done so that I can get the promotion, the client, insert whatever thing here. Those are one area of folks that I help. And then there are also organizations, especially I have a heart for social impact nonprofits who are doing really great work, but they're probably small organizations and they really want to be telling stories around their programs and their impacts, but they literally don't have the people to tell them. And so I love to go and partner with those types of organizations and like just talk to them about the types of stories that they want to tell and help them sort of produce the content to tell them. So all stories to help people grow their work.
I love that. And I actually have somebody I'm writing down a name I'm going to introduce you to. With that being said, where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more about the work that you do?
Absolutely. If you fell in that first bucket, a creative, and you kind of want some resources to help get you started on your way, I've got some really great stuff at lightmycareermatch.com. That's a really great way to plug into where I am. And then for organizations who want to poke around and maybe see some samples, you can go to careersteward.co.
Excellent. You guys can put those links in the show notes. So if you connected with Shaté and I want to learn more and utilize her special skill set, then go ahead and click those links. Go reach out to her. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you and see if it's a good fit. Shaté, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
I mean, since we're talking about being label free and like your whole platform is about that, my last words are usually this thing, but it's so fitting for this conversation, and that is you can, period. So you were saying before, there are a lot of folks who maybe stay in situations because they're too scared to face, whatever the risk is of finding a fulfilling body of work. But you absolutely can. Like literally all you have to do is give yourself permission to do it. And yes, it'll be a little scary you might be like, why the heck did I decide to do this? But the other side of that is just so rewarding. I think I was listening to one of your episodes and it was like, you get to the end of your life and you don't regret the things that you did do. You regret the things that you didn't do.
Oh, yes. That was Courtney. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so when you get to a certain point in your life and you're like, gosh, why did I stay in this career that I didn't like or just tolerated? Like you can change that story now. So I would just say you can, period. Like move forward. You can do the thing.
Absolutely. And if it's not within your career, stepping outside your comfort zone to experience some kind of adventure. And that might be small for you, but it could be big for someone else. And it's okay to say yes to it and try it. You never know.
Absolutely. 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 Yeah.
Shaté, it was so awesome to connect with you today and hear your story and the work that you do. I love it. Keep saying yes.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hear an update from you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.